With alarming spikes in COVID, there were 2,100 new infections nationwide, more than 1,000 in Quebec alone, and over 700 in Ontario, which is putting in new rules. Restaurants, bars, banquet halls and gyms in hotspots will all face tougher restrictions on their operations and will be required to collect contact information from all patrons for contact tracing. Meantime, the majority of those testing positive continue to be under the age of 40. But how can officials effectively communicate public health messaging to young people? For more on this, let's bring in John Bardawill, Managing Director of Marketing and Sales Consulting for the firm TMG International. Now, he joins me from Quebec, Lévis, Quebec. John, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. The current messaging, is it sufficient?
No, it's not. I think there's a lot of messaging going on, but it's not necessarily targeted to this particular group. And this group is a little bit unusual or different than the general population. The under 40 group is much more risk orientated, and they're much more interested in socializing for different reasons. If they're younger, they're really expanding their social network, and if they're a little older with families and children, then they're expanding their network based on that family life. Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit unique. And I think one of the things that the government has not recognized is the uniqueness of their needs, and therefore managed to plan communications to that would really get them to respond.
Right. And so what can the government and public health do to reach this age group?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think from a messaging standpoint, I think the first thing they need to do is stop talking about risk and start talking about consequences. There's a lot of conversations about the risk of COVID, but to this general population, it's perceived as a low concern, and it's also something that it's a little bit like bears with honey, if I could use that analogy. A great example we've had in the marketplace with the government in the past is a number of years ago when Red Bull launched. They ended up, the government was concerned about some of the ingredients, so they asked Red Bull to put warning labels on it. And as a result, it actually fueled the growth of the business because it was attractive to younger people who were a little bit counter. And we've seen examples of that with COVID, in universities where students have had COVID parties. It's actually an attractive thing to do, which sounds a little bit unusual, to say the least. So they really need to start to focus on the consequences, the health dangers of it. And it's not really just about these young people. It's about the impact on their families, on their parents, their peers, and their grandparents. And as we get into Thanksgiving coming up, this is a great opportunity either to have a very safe Thanksgiving or a unhealthy Thanksgiving. So concerning, to say the least. I think a second thing that they need to do is think about how to communicate to this population. This population is very big on TikTok. They go to social media for their news, Instagram, Twitter. This is where they get their information. They don't get it from traditional media sources. And they also need to talk visually to them. They're used to seeing things visually, so not as much on information on a website. It doesn't respond the same way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and John, just very quickly here,
yes.
There is an app that's available to report positive cases. Do you think that that app can be more successful if the messaging changes as well? We only have about 30 seconds.
Absolutely. I think, in fairness, the app is a good app. It works. It does the job it needs to do. The problem is it's self-identifying. And so if the government wants us to be successful and we as a country want us to be successful, we need to be able to provide information on how to use the app, not how the app works. And if you look at the app and download it, that's what it tells you. It tells you how the app works, not how you can use the app.
Okay, John Bardawill, we do have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today. John is Managing Director of Marketing and Sales Consulting for the firm TMG International. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, seeking justice.